Hello. Who are you? Doesn't matter. Welcome.
Hey everyone, Undead Aaron here today to give you my review on Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice. Ninja Theory has done something really special here. It's hard to put it into words, but I'm going to try my best. The first part of this review, I'm going to cover the generic aspects of the game, from the design to the mechanics, and just basically what it feels like to play the game. Then I will move on to what would be spoiler content. But don't worry, I will give you warning before we get into the spoiler content, so you can stop the video at that point if you want to experience the game for yourself, which I highly recommend you do. Anyway, I hope you enjoy this review. Let's get started. The game is set in the Viking Age, and you play as Senua, a broken Celtic warrior set to embark on a quest into Viking Hell to fight for the soul of her dead lover. This is actually the first game I've ever done a live blind playthrough on, and the first video in that series will launch with this review for a total of 6 videos to be released over the next 5 days. So if you want to see my experience, those videos are there. It is so hard to imagine this game is 7 years old, because where the game really shines is in the audio and visual elements, as well as in the narrative. The audio in this game is unlike anything you will have likely ever experienced before. The binaural audio engineering really creates a sense of spatial sound that is truly, truly impressive. The environmental audio and the score are also just next level amazing. When you hear waves crash around you, it feels like you're actually at the ocean. The way the game shifts audio depending on the environment is done flawlessly, and the audio is really a major part of this game. The visuals are equally impressive, with amazing lighting effects, special effects, and bizarre cutscenes. The game almost feels like Remedy got their hands on it. There are times Senua makes eye contact with the player as she is speaking, and at times you wonder if it might just be you, the player, she is actually talking to. There are things done in this game I have never seen or heard in any game. This game will push you into being uncomfortable, but it also knows when to let up. It's this amazing balancing act between light and dark. It's a perfect choreographed dance of horror and hope. The combat is pretty basic, and it's okay. There are some mechanics you have to learn. The targeting system is definitely the weak spot. The boss fights are definitely fun, but there's only a few of them. And some of the mob fights can be frustrating because you lose control of the camera when in combat and have to deal with this limited mobility and fixed perspective, and that creates awkward angles so you don't really know what's going on your flanks or behind you, which I think this may have been done intentionally so that you always feel like someone is behind you, and there usually is. The combat itself looks great visually, but the design of the combat, again, let me come back to that, that system could have been done better. I kind of give this a pass when I look at the game as a whole, but I really think the experience could have been better with a more refined combat system. One thing I love is this game has no user interface at all. No button prompts. You're just put into the world with no idea how much health you have or where you're going. You have light attacks, you have heavy attacks, you have a melee attack, which is essentially kind of like a stun interrupt, and then you have a charge, which you can kind of link into that stun interrupt or into your attacks. So you have like running attacks, and then you have like the sidestep dodge roll, and that's pretty much it. You can also use your focus ability once you build it up to kind of slow down time, which is pretty cool for some of the harder enemies. But again, with no UI, you have to pay attention to certain visual cues to know when you've had that charge. This created a really deep and intense immersive experience, never knowing if the next hit you take from a sword is going to be your last. Personally, I've always been bothered by invisible walls or impassable objects that should not in any way be impassable, and this game has both. The invisible walls are very few in this game, and mainly only at the ocean areas of the game, so I guess that's acceptable, but the impassable objects are in abundance. And they can be really small things like a 6-inch rock. I just don't like the idea that a strong warrior that can wield a sword and fight legions of enemies is somehow incapable of pulling themselves up a 3-foot ledge or stepping over a rock. It's not that I think every game should be open world. I actually really enjoy a well-designed linear story. I just wish the game had been designed with more realistic, impassable objects to keep you on the path they want to keep you on. About midway through the game, you actually get a small taste of open world-ish gameplay where you can pick where you want to go next, so that was a nice touch. When you analyze the game after you've finished it, it actually makes total sense the way it's designed to keep players in a contained area that you're currently exploring for narrative purposes. I just think they could have gone about it a little better than a pile of rocks. The puzzle-solving aspect of the game is really well done as well, and just when you think the puzzles are repetitive, they change them up on you. And while the Rune Gate theme carries over through the entire game, they change up a lot of the ways to get there, and a lot of the environmental puzzles, and they're done in some really original and unique ways that tie the narrative into the puzzles perfectly. Similar with the combat system. Just when you think it's repetitive, they throw in a boss fight or introduce a new threat. I think your perception of this game and how it affects you is highly individual. People who have experienced trauma, loss, grief, war, or have existing psychological conditions may find the game therapeutic, while others may find it disturbing. And it's really hard to know how it will affect each individual, while someone else might not really understand the game at all and just judge it purely on its combat. Because of this, it's really hard to recommend this game to everyone, but at the same time, I feel like it's a game everyone should play. We'll get more into that when I get to the spoilers part of this review. The story does take you through a lot of twists and turns, and just when you think you know what the story is about, your perception will change, and change, and change, until you just give in to the experience and stop trying to figure it out. At least that's what I did. Like it or not, this game is innovative, it's brilliant, and it manages to somehow be completely original. Whereas going into it, I kind of thought, oh, God of War with a woman. Not even close. This is one of the few games I will consider art. I'll say the same thing about Hellblade that I said about Alan Wake 2. I think some people will love it and other people will hate it. And there are not going to be very few people that are just going to be like, well, it was okay. And the only way to know if you're one of the people who love it or hate it is to play it. And right now it's $3 on Steam. So you really can't go wrong. You can easily finish it in a weekend, coming in around 5 to 8 hours depending on how much time you spend on it. There is a part of this game where people who use the term walking simulator will call it a walking simulator. There's a good portion of this game where you're just puzzle solving and you have no weapon. So people may not like that. I, for one, like games where you're immersed in the environment and you can just look around at the beautiful art and enjoy the narrative and enjoy the sound effects. But I get that some people don't like that. So you're gonna have a couple hours where you're not gonna be doing any fighting at all. So now we're gonna get into the spoilers. Now's your time to turn off the video, and please leave a comment or a thumbs up, or even a thumbs down at this point. Hellblade is essentially the ultimate mind game, figuratively and somewhat literally. It is a psychological dark fantasy based on the fragility and complexity of the human mind. You eventually realize that every aspect of the game is designed to mess with the player on a deeper level. The story you're being told is not the actual story, and yet it is the actual story. Even the warning that the rot is going to take you over and that if you die too many times, the rot will spread to your brain, the game will end, and you will have all of your data deleted. That's not real. And I believed it going in. I believed it was a permadeath game. It's not. The game is essentially designed to simulate psychosis. Although I did watch the included documentary video after I finished the game, where Ninja Theory explains that the events actually took place. Senua is actually a real woman, and she is in that time period dealing with psychosis. I thought that there was something else going on, and you may too. And I think it's okay to take away a different meaning from the game, and I think they want you to take away a different meaning from the game. Watching the documentary really kind of touched me because they really went to extensive lengths to work with the mental health community, from people who suffer from psychosis and mental illness to the doctors who work with them, to portray this in a way that was respectful and could also kind of be like a teaching tool for those who have no idea what it's like. Even the combat in the game is a metaphor for overcoming struggles. If you take too much damage, you get to the point where you can barely move or swing your sword. But if you manage to somehow win that fight, you get stronger again. Much like someone fighting through a depression or an anxiety attack or a hard time in their life. The deaths that take place in the game are symbolic of the fact that sometimes we lose ourselves, almost like an ego death of sorts. I went into this game completely blind, which is the best way to experience a game in my opinion. I didn't even watch the trailer. This came up to me as a recommended game on my Steam library, and for $3 I figured, hey, let's just do it. For every hour I spent on this game, I had a new theory about what was actually going on. So it kept changing, and that was cool. It keeps you guessing. I love games that have these total what the fuck moments. But this game continued to deliver them right until the end. And I started to expect the unexpected, but I honestly didn't expect the ending that we got. The game was almost like therapy for me, although I could see it might have the opposite effect on some people. It can definitely and will make you feel uncomfortable. And I would imagine each person's playthrough and their interpretation of the game will vary greatly. There are so many moments that can resonate with each person differently based on the experiences that you've had in your actual life. So I'd imagine no two people will experience this game the same. This game had a profound impact on me. And I'm actually getting a little emotional just delivering this monologue right now. Just playing it brought up all kinds of memories and emotions and stuff under the surface that I had forgotten about. It's an experience that I'm absolutely glad I had. And I still don't know if I can recommend it or not. And it's impossible for me to rate it. It's one of 3 games in my entire life that made me cry. And when Arthur Morgan died, I think we all cried. But this was more like an actual emotional breakdown. When I did the live video, I actually had to cut some of it. I started out thinking the game was about one thing, but at the end of the journey, it became something else to me entirely. It's dark, it's tense, but it's also beautiful and joyful. The game ends with Senua accepting herself and learning to use what others call a curse or a mental illness as a power. She sheds the weakness by fighting it, but ultimately she accepts it. And then she invites us to join her on her next journey. With that, I'm running out of things to say about this game. But with Hellblade 2 coming out in spring of this year, I fully intend to play it on day one, regardless of its price. This is Undead Aaron. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a comment or a like, or consider subscribing. I hope you're all happy, healthy, and doing well. Have a great day.